from, sir?
Originally from South Florida. Grew up around Broward County. As I got older, I kind of bounced around a lot to Miami and Palm Beach, and eventually made it up here towards the Orlando area.
For all the people who don't know what Miami's like, what's Miami like?
It was definitely a fun place to grow up, but as I got older and had kids, it wasn't somewhere I wanted my kids to grow up.
That's crazy because that was kind of the same answer I got from mom. Yeah. I remember I was born in 92. We left around 97, 98, right? And Miami in the 90s was crazy.
It was a wild place.
It was crazy. I mean, you hear the stories. Like, put it this way, my uncle worked at the Obatala airport.
Okay.
And he would work security, right? Now, mind you, this is like the famous era of when, the carjackings were happening and, it was the chop shops in Obatala.
Yeah.
It was to the point, it was getting so dangerous, he actually got caught on camera sleeping in a car. Oh. Because what he would do is, because he knew a lot of the guys from the neighborhood would actually, do what they would do, and they were hitting up the airport pretty hard. And he wanted no parts of that because the security guards were getting it too. Yeah. So he would just lock himself in a car with the tinted windows, and he would just wake up and, clock out. But one day they were like, hey, we're missing a lot of inventory. And they looked at the camera and they were like, could you please explain why you're in a car and these 20 guys are, completely busting down a car and leaving with it. And he just took off his badge and he said, thank you for your time.
I'm done with this.
Done. So
wild.
I really was, it's always nice to meet somebody from the same place. It was crazy when you told me you lived in Lago.
Yes. Yeah. My first apartment was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there for maybe like a year and a half, about that.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we lived, because I was born on 27th around 151st in Lago, but we lived in Lago, and that area has completely changed too.
Yeah. Even when I lived there, this was maybe like 10 years ago now. But even when I lived there, it was a lot calmer than it was, a few years prior.
Yeah, actually, I remember during the 𝗃 when it was the day of the Yoyen days. I remember 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗃𝗃.
Yeah.
Lord willing, we'll have him on soon. He blessed me with a haircut, but he took me down memory lane. He took me back, because we lived by the pool, and he took me to Prado, and his barbershop's over there nearby. So it was really emotional, because it's crazy how you can start in one place, 25 years go by, and then you accomplish something so great right back where you started.
Yep.
So the way the world moves is wild. So did you see any bits of the religion while you were still living down there? Because some people live there and they have no idea.
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of it. I had a lot of friends and knew a lot of people. So you go to people's houses and you see warriors and stuff like that behind the door. I didn't really understand it, though, at that point. I didn't really come to know what it was until I was living up here. Yeah.
And what were your first impressions of it? I mean, maybe you saw like a 𝗃𝗍𝗲, or what was, even though you didn't fully get it, like what was the vibe?
To be honest, when I first saw it down there, it was kind of just, I always been very respectful of other people's beliefs, so I see it as their thing, and they tell me a little bit about it, and I kind of just kept it moving after that. Yeah. I wasn't really too inquisitive, to be honest. Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things that hides in plain sight too. Definitely. Like you'll see like this, huge 𝗃𝗍𝗲 for like Obatala or somebody, be like, oh, it's a nice piece of furniture, maybe with like some religious connotations. Yep. But let's get back to what we were talking about, right? So, because mom's a pretty spiritual lady too.
Extremely.
So, like, what were some of the things you saw growing up, or that started spiritualizing yourself, or maybe recognizing, the beliefs?
Yeah, so I grew up, my mom was always into, like, Wicca and more pagan, things like that. I remember being a kid, we would be going to different metaphysical shops, and she would be sitting in circles and going to other people's houses and stuff like that, and it definitely put me on a path to look for something a little bit deeper than what some other more common religions kind of offer.
Yeah, like someone such as myself, that we were just, Cuban Catholic, you know?
Yeah.
But that is an interesting path to begin on, because, you hear so many, like, dynasty stories of, like, my grandfather was a Babalawo, my great-great-great-grandfather was a Babalawo, and, this cousin was a Santeria, and people that come from, like, these, dynasties, lineages of just Orisha practitioners, and then, you see somebody such as yourself, Babalawo now, and, some of your first spiritual experiences were Wicca.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's really awesome, because when you look at the literature of Ifa and you look at all the paths that Orunmila walked, it was definitely one of them, you know, with nature-based worship and things like that. And I think it even sometimes makes things a little more legitimate, because you see some people who are very keen on, you know, you come from a religious family, right? Or are you Cuban? Or, you know, you basically get, I've had people call the botanica and be like, are they Cuban? You know, what does he look like? You know, how old is he? You know, how has not fitting the stereotype been for you?
It's definitely had its challenges, trying to fit in culturally when you're brought up a different way and things aren't always the same from house to house. Definitely language has been a huge barrier as well. Especially when you're working in ceremonies, you got groups of guys together, everything is in Spanish.
Yeah, and Cuban Spanish at that, Cuban or Caribbean Spanish, yeah.
Yes, all the books, and at least most any book that's worth reading is written in Spanish. A lot of the English books really don't. They have a little bit of value to them, but a lot of them seem to have a lot of stuff missing. So that's definitely been a little bit of a struggle, but Google Translate and stuff definitely helps out a lot.
Shout out to Google Translate,
yes,
man.
Yeah, shout out to Google.
But has it ever really been a discouraging factor, or did it motivate you more?
No, not discouraging. If anything, it's been to amp me up, to make me want to learn how to do Spanish, to make me push harder, to make me try harder, because it's an obstacle that you have to overcome, and are you going to let the obstacle overcome you, or are you going to push through it and persevere, you know?
At what point then do you start not only recognizing the Santeria Ifa landscape, but start saying, hey, I'm interested in that?
Well, so when I first got into this, I was looking for some kind of spiritual connection and something. I didn't really know what I was looking for. I had went to get a tarot card reading, and it really wasn't deep enough for me, I guess. Yeah. I left there very unfulfilled, and I had a conversation with my mom, and she was telling me to go and look for someone who could read shells. You know, so I made a phone call to a few botanicas, and I found a Babalawo, which ended up being my godfather, and I went in there to get a reading, and everything was good. He actually ended up telling me that I was going to get really sick, and I'm not a person that gets sick very often, and he told me to get insurance. I didn't have insurance at the time. So I listened, and I got the insurance, and about a month later, I was in the hospital with like $30,000 in medical bills, and thankfully I had the insurance, so it worked out. But as soon as I came out, I went to him, I'm like, man, you called it. You said this was going to happen, you know? And started asking how to move forward after that, and we started talking about going and doing my warriors, and I went to drumming, and I saw Ogunda came out of the drum. And when I saw that, that was really my confirmation that it was like, this is the truth, you know?
That's really interesting, especially mom being from a different, you know, background, and her kind of providing that, you know, that guidance, like, hey, look towards this. And, you know, there's very excellent tarot card readers, but not everybody's going to resonate with everyone the same way, you know?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure how your tarot card reading, I remember the first time I got read, the One of Cups came up, and the lady was like, oh, no, oh, God. So I get it. You know, you kind of look for a little bit more. And it's not that it can't get there, but Ifa is profoundly on another level. Would you mind sharing what you were sick with?
They really couldn't even tell me. I just had a stomach bug, but that stomach bug lasted for like 3 weeks. I lost like 30 pounds. I went to the hospital 2 or 3 times, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, $10,000 a visit, man. That ER stuff. My father, he's an emergency room doctor, and he says, man, it's $1,000 just to sit down. Yeah,
it's wild.
You know, and it might literally be like, here's this cream, you know, and there's another $1,000 cream. So, you know, but you kind of look at it, he kind of, maybe not saved your life, but he definitely saved the situation. Your Oluo.
Absolutely.
You know, and those are the moments that kind of build faith, because it's like, you know, especially something that close.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You know? So at that point, when you go through that process with him, before we get into like the initiation steps, what's going through your mind, being that this guy just called this completely phenomenal, like, bug?
I mean, going through my mind at that point was just nothing but faith. At that point, I was sold. I was sold. I'm like, where does this road take me? Let's go. I'm riding. Let's get there, you know?
Wow. So you go through your hand of Ifa process, right? Was Obatala on your radar? Did you know about the Orishas to that point?
Not really. I had spoken to a few people. I thought I was going to be a child of ¡𝗀𝗏𝗏 coming in.
Welcome to the club. Yeah, me too.
Yep, I thought I was going to be a child of ¡𝗀𝗏𝗏. My godfather said he thought I was going to be a child of 𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏. We did my mama 𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏. I came out with 𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏. And
banging.
Yep, we asked 𝗀𝗏𝗏 first. 𝗀𝗏𝗏 said no, and then after that they went to Obatala, and Obatala said yes. And I mean, after that I learned a lot about Obatala, and I mean, now I love Obatala. He's everything to me.
Yeah. And I mean, as far as characteristics between him and you, what commonalities do you see, positive and negative?
Definitely need to do things completely. Do things completely, start to finish.
He would get bored very quickly. He was so intelligent. And,
Yes.
you know, to be frank with you, speaking about him as an older man, he was a little bit lazy or a little bit lethargic. I mean, the snail, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get that, sure.
Yeah.
But, I mean, from a virtuous standpoint or a positive standpoint, what resonates with you with him?
Oh, absolutely. Obatala is the judge, and I've always been very right is right and wrong is wrong, you know? I mean, there's definitely gray areas and everything, but there's always has to be a balance.
Awesome. So you have your hand of Ifa. How's that, you know, because after the hand of Ifa, you know, it's a very eye-opening experience, and, you know, you're seeing processes, you're seeing the pulling of 𝗃𝗃, which is like, whoa, at least for me it was at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, was it a point in that ceremony where you're like, I can do this or I want to do this?
I don't even think I had made that much of a thought process going into it at that point. I left from there, and I had known I knew what the cost was to get crowned, and it was it's a very costly ceremony.
It's astronomical.
In my head at that point, I'm like, I'm not going to spend that kind of money. That's not happening. I'm like, I believe in this and all that stuff, but I don't. That's a lot, you know. And then about a month after that, I did my kids' mano de orulas.
Okay.
And my mom had went in with them, and they all did their mano orula together.
Yeah.
And about 2 months after that, I ended up receiving 𝘃𝗀.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I received 𝘃𝗀, and then after I received 𝘃𝗀, everything just kind of fell into the place. The money fell into my lap, and
That's
I was
wild.
like, let's do this, man.
Yeah.
Santos on the books.
That's wild. Especially with 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗃, you know, especially when you were living that phase, or even now you're Odu of Ogunda Kete, especially Ogunda Kete, he speaks very heavily. But, you know, when mom receives her hand of Ifa and, you know, comes with the Odu she comes with, you know, kind of identifying it's ideal for you guys to go together, or if not, her before,
Absolutely.
you know, what was going through your mind now when you're about to take these huge spiritual steps in correlation with the person that has kind of guided your spiritual journey up until that point?
I was very happy for her. I was very happy that she was open to coming into this faith with me and taking these steps with me, and ultimately to have someone to go through my 𝗃𝗏𝗏 with. You know, I wasn't just one person walking around in white pretty much everywhere. I mean, aside from work, we spent a lot of time going and doing whatever it was that we did together, and it was nice to have someone to go through that process with me.
Yeah, that resonates a lot because, you know, your mom and my mom have the same Odu, which is pretty wild. Different guardian angels, but just to see the similarity in process and even, you know, journey, how, you know, she fulfilled one step and then ultimately you were meant for more, but to be able to share that, it really resonates with that Odu. And then to see your children, what was it like seeing your kids receive it?
It was very humbling. It was
a lot of trust.
It was, and it was I was very proud that I was able to bring them through that step. I feel whatever anyone's beliefs are in life, whatever religion anyone decides to ultimately practice, I feel everyone could benefit from having their mano de orula and from knowing their sign of Ifa and having that guidance, and especially to have it for the children at such a young age, to know how to guide them through their trajectory of life. I was very happy to have been able to do that with them at such a young age.
Yeah, I really love that, brother, because that's really what Orula is about. He's about making us better husbands, better sons, better brothers, better fathers. And, you know, the positive effect it could have on the kids, or like you said, everybody, you know, because there's a lot of people. I know people that live. My grandmother lived to 86, just hand of Ifa. And she had a sign that was like, crown, do this, do all that. The 84-year-old woman, when she received, you know, she was very blessed to be able to make it that far. I think Orunmila, you know, was very kind to give us another 2 years with her. But just the hand of Ifa, just to know who you are and to have kind of like that spiritual blood type, that spiritual MRI to be able to treat them.
Yep, absolutely. My godfather used to call it the Medicaid card.
Yeah, very, very sound analogy there, because, you know, I have clients, right, that, you know, have been attending themselves with me for years, and they've invested enough funds to be Babalawos by now or Orishas by now. And, you know, I tell them, I said, I'd really love it if you just do the hand of Ifa. And, you know, I don't overstimulate them too much because everybody's different, but it is ideal. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because just the profoundness of the effects of doing it both from your sign, or doing anything from your sign, which is your spiritual DNA, it can't be compared. You know, without going into ceremonial detail, you know, what was 𝘃𝗀𝗏 like? You know, I mean, because we get so much questions on him. Like, they're like, Baba, do another episode on 𝘃𝗀𝗏. And there's only so much we could talk about, but, you know, what was the energy like?
𝘃𝗀𝗏 is an intense ceremony.
Yeah.
It's a very intense ceremony, very, rigorous. Not for the faint of heart.
Yeah. For gentlemen, as I like to say.
Definitely for gentlemen. Going into that ceremony, not being a Babalawo.
Yeah.
Not really knowing
it's
the physical ceremony I was walking into was definitely, it was a lot.
Because they're going to try you more.
Yeah,
they're going to try you more because, like, usually if you're hopping Osang before Ifa, it's because you're going to do Ifa at some point. So they're testing you and whatnot. So you got to hold sturdy. But, you know, one thing I noticed about that energy, because mine was actually done during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like, I remember like a gust of wind really coming, like when we first started, and just seeing it move through the leaves and stuff like that. And you kind of saw nature moving around, like a squirrel was staring at me. I'm like, whoa, you know, but the energy it's so profound. But I think if it's done correctly and with proper intention, it's almost airy.
Yeah.
Like it's almost light, you know, even with all the intensity that's in it. So yeah, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I mean, the parts where you're not going through pain, right?
For sure.
So you have Osang, the money's there. Now we're on our way to crown Obatala. You know, to a certain degree, what was that process like? What's going through your mind?
Moving forward towards crowning Obatala?
Yeah.
Excitement.
Yeah.
Excitement and eager and jumping out of my skin. Like, I just want to be in the room already. For sure. I was very excited, very eager to get there. And then once you get there, it's hurry up and wait.
Yeah,
now
hurry up and wait.
A whole long year.
Yeah, hurry up, slow me down. Yeah, and you look at your sign of a 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗶 at that point, you know, the proverb, the famous proverb, his voice will fill the room of Orisha and Ifa. You know what I'm saying? So it's very grandiose. It's speaking of great things, especially with Obatala being really integral when it comes to the practice of, you know, Ifism, right? Which is what we do. And I you know what's crazy, brother, is like I feel like Orisha was difficult and Ifa was easy. Like, at least in my situation, I had been wanting to crown since I was like 9 or 10, you know, and, you know, you're young, you make a lot of mistakes, you don't know how to save money, you know, you're not really working. Sure. And I remember just thinking like, wow, if I ever actually get a chance to crown this lady, you know, I don't know if I'm going to do anything else, because it was such a long and arduous path. And, you know, she really spanks us. I think y'all's process might be a little bit different. Not saying you have it easier, but the yellow team is like, she's very, very like minute with us. Like she expects a lot from us, especially the boys. Yeah. You know, so you crown Obatala, you see a bunch of things you've never seen before. I think Mom said you finished your year in white.
Yep. Went through the whole year in white, presented to the drums, the whole 9 yards.
What advice can you give to somebody going through their year in white? Because I'll be frank with you, my year in white was horrible.
Stick with it. Yeah. Stick with it. I remember someone told me.
There's a lot of Orishas are ending up in the garbage now.
It's a shame. It's a shame. It saddens me to hear things like that. You know, that's ultimately not what anybody wants.
Yeah.
Someone told me when I first did my Santo when I was a Yawo, they said, your year in white is the most powerful that you will ever be in life, but it is also the most vulnerable you'll ever be in life, because you're the baby of the Santo. So you're a baby. Everything touches you and you feel everything, but at the same time, you're so protected by everything. But because of that, like I said, you can feel everything and you're so open to everything around you, it's easy to get deterred. And I feel like when you're on that path, things are always going to come in to test you, to pull you away, to see if you're deserving of those blessings as well. And you got to persevere and push through it.
Yeah. And I think even more so you guys, because literally the rules of the Yaworaje are basically the rules of the child of Obatala.
Yep.
You know, everything, and that's why the white cloth and all those things, and Obatala, you know, when you look at a baby, it's swaddled in a white cloth. Unfortunately, when we pass away based on our rights, we're in a white cloth, you know, like, you know, or people are, you know, it's just, it makes a lot of sense, especially with your process. But that's why, I'll tell you, I think me doing my Yaworaje well really set things up for the rest of my life. You know, because I behaved. And my grandmother didn't have Orisha done, but she had, you know, 𝗃𝗏 and stuff like that. And she was like monitoring me. She's like, oh, you're not sitting on the floor. Oh,
she was on it.
Oh, it's 6:05. You're not home yet. And I was around the corner.
Yeah.
So, you know, just to have that support system from her or mom, and obviously you in your situation, it helps.
Yeah, support system definitely helps. Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's this huge video going on now of, you know, people throwing like some woman, you know, basically, you know, converting and things like that and completely destroying her Orishas now.
Really?
Yeah. And now, mind you, it's not only the economic amount.
Yeah.
It really isn't, because, you know, you pay a couple dollars for this stuff, you know, but just the sacrifice. It's really ironic to me how people can sacrifice so much for something, I would imagine, and then all of a sudden you have it, and then it's disposable to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the animals that had to give their lives for these things to be born. The first thing, whenever I give somebody an animal and you present them with it, I always tell them the first thing, thank the animal for its sacrifice.
Word.
That's always the first thing I tell people, you know, and I feel like a lot of people lose sight of that.
Yeah. Now, before we move on, what would you say to somebody who's on the brink of throwing their stuff out?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Put them in a bag and put them in a closet.
Yeah.
Think about it another year from now.
Yeah.
Wait. Just wait, because your mind will change. And you're going to end up regretting this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will regret it, and you're going to have a lot of negative repercussions in your life.
Human beings are an interesting group.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? We're so emotional, and we're so quick to, you know, want to discard or distance ourselves. Like the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗍 says, people hate sickness so much they'd rather die than be sick. No, but they still lose sight of the fact you're alive.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? We don't want to go through the struggle. We don't want to go through the obstacles that come with success.
Yeah.
You know, and success isn't only a vehicle. It's not only a certain amount on our bank account. It's sometimes it's just resilience.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important message for viewership and people in general, yo. Like, but so we get through our year in white.
Yep.
What's going through your mind?
Going through to the end of the year in white?
Oh yeah, we just finished.
Just finished. I've already paid for 𝗃𝗏.
Really?
Yeah, I had already paid for 𝗃𝗏 at that point, and we're on track, getting everything ready to walking from one room to the next.
It's a different dynamic, right?
It was. For me, like how you said, Santo was very difficult and 𝗃𝗏 was easy for you.
Yeah.
I was the opposite. Santo,
Wow.
I was the baby, and everything was just, I feel like everything just happened, and everything fell into my lap. And once I got into 𝗃𝗏, it was pump the brakes, and it was like, you need to work on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we can start helping other people.
Yeah, and I say it was difficult for me because just my process up until that point, I feel like Ochung had strung me out to the point where I really didn't have any juice left.
Yeah.
So I'm like, she's really not going to get much out of me at this point. And, you know, the money for 𝗃𝗏 came out of nowhere at the end of my year. So I'm happy I stuck it out, of course. And then, you know, I was very lucky. My godfather, he really facilitated things in a way where, you know, I was just able to start learning. But I tell you, one thing that really attracted me to it and I loved so much was just the Babalaos.
Yeah.
You know, when you're going through kind of that honeymoon phase where it's like you're coming in, you're meeting everybody, you know, your godfather's like, this is my guy. And, you know, what was that like just to experience that fraternity? Maybe at least the first time within the spirituality, because there's nothing like it.
Yeah, it was very nice to have that kind of community and that family,
Yeah.
in a sense, you know, that brotherhood, that it's something you don't really find any other place, you know.
So now you're a Babalawo.
Yep.
What are some of the obstacles that we're seeing now? Because, you know, like I was recently talking to another brother, and, you know, there's always the plateau. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to eat the book as soon as you come out. You've seen all these glorious processes. You're like, I want to learn. But, you know, I'd be lying if even me, you know, 6 months in, 8 months in, you don't want to look at the book sometimes. So what are some of the things you noticed that you had to overcome as far as study and things like that, you know, when you hit that point?
Definitely that, you know, even when you're tired, when you don't want to, it's been a long day, you still got to crack the book. You still got to look at it. You know, you had another video where another gentleman was saying you leave Orunmila for a day and he leaves you for 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
man.
That's something that's definitely stuck with me, you know, and you got to push through it. Plateau, I guess, for me would definitely be the language barrier. I've struggled a lot with the language barrier when it comes to studying, you know. Like I said, Google Translate, it does the world, but it definitely doesn't translate everything completely. So at that point, I end up with a lot of questions, and I'm calling you at that point, hey, I've read this, it translated this way, but what's your take on it? Am I understanding this correctly? And
how many people do you think we're losing because of language?
A lot. I think if there was a good, solid English book, it would change the community.
Because that's the thing. A lot of people are like, I want to read, but I don't want to read something that I have to unlearn. Obviously, I won't mention any titles, but I think I've unlearned maybe almost as much as I learned.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm right there with you. Absolutely.
And it serves its purpose, too, because knowing what not to do is maybe even more important than knowing what to do sometimes. But, you know, it is a motivating factor for us to continue doing what we're doing, because the idea of, you know, losing all these great people who are interested in Lukumi, you know, as a practice because of language, you know, we got to do better. in that regard.
Yeah.
You know, because it could be drastic, because you have a lot of great English speaking people who are interested in the Afro Cuban side of things, because it's like I've told other people, I've had the opportunity to practice 𝗃𝗍. I've been invited by really great brothers over there, but honestly, I enjoy ours so much.
Yeah.
So was Lukumi, I mean, now that you're a little older in Ifa, how do you feel about the Lukumi practice, you know, as versus maybe the things you've been able to see from 𝗃𝗍? You know, what are some of the things that kind of keep you here ultimately?
I feel with the community that we live in, the way that we practice makes a lot more sense. We don't live in this tribal setting where one set of deities can kind of take care of the town.
Wow.
You know what I mean? We need to have our own things. We need to have a collective. We need to have these things living with us in our home, because we're not in that kind of tribe. We're not in a village. Everybody practices a different religion from house to house. So it's a much different setting. And for that reason, I feel the Lukumi makes the most sense on this side of the ocean.
Yeah, that's a great point, brother. I never really heard it put into those terms, but yeah. I mean, because, you know, you look at the rustic way of doing things, it makes a lot of sense within that clan-based, village-based practice, right? Where, you know, we're all Shango priests, and we're going to resolve everything with Shango and 𝘃𝗍 and the Babalaos. But when you come over here and you're interacting with so many different heads and so many different situations, and even they started doing it, you know, before, you know, the slave trade happened and things like that. The pilgrimage and the apprenticeship was always the norm, where you go to other places and learn and possibly receive other deities. It was more like when we arrived over here, we were kind of forced. Yeah. Because if not, you know, these things are going to be lost. And then the scary thing is, how much did we lose? Yeah. You know, and it's promising how much we were able to preserve as well. But it really, it makes sense what you're saying, you know. Your partner's initiated, your wife.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, she's got her hermano de Orula.
How has the dynamic been different? You know, presumably you had other relationships before her. You know, how has it benefited you? How has it motivated you? How has it stabilized you to have a partner who not only supports you, but is also a part of what you're doing?
It definitely helps. Being a working priest, it's long nights, a lot of hours, you know, and having someone who understands that and understands what this religion is, it helps a lot to understand things of that matter. As well, if you both share one faith, there can be nothing in between you guys. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I feel for that sense it helps a lot as well. Just for things that I've gone through in other relationships, it's always kind of been like, well, this is standing in between us because I don't agree with this or that or whatever. And it's really not in between us. We're just on different pages.
Yeah. It's a scary idea, right? When, especially being in this priesthood where you're like, you know, you want to give your kids hand of Ifa at least. And if you're with somebody who's completely adverse to that, you know, just the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, at that point, it just doesn't work usually.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's very, very improbable. I haven't seen many situations where that actually works out. And usually if it does work out, it's because they've been together decades already. Yeah. But new budding relationships, different viewpoints, usually, you know, there's just things that are insurmountable. Yeah.
I actually had relationships end at almost all of my initiations.
Really?
Yeah, as I was going to Santo, a relationship ended. As I was going into Ifa, a relationship ended.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And that lets you know that, you know, it's not that the Orishas are getting rid of anybody, but it's like nature is moving in a way where if you're going in one direction and I'm going in another, if we're not growing together, we're growing apart.
Exactly.
So I tell you, at least in my situation, as well as yours, like, it's been gratifying, but also very comforting to know I don't have to think about that. You know, like when my stepkids had hand of Ifa before I came into the picture, but just being able to have my daughter and, you know, not even have to have that conversation is just very relieving, you know.
For sure.
Ethnically, what are you, my friend?
So my mom is English and my dad is Sephardic.
What is that?
Sephardics were Jews. It translates to Spanish Jew. They were in Spain and they were eventually kicked out of Spain, and they were nomadic people. They went through Turkey, into Greece, into Italy, and eventually over here, most of them through Ellis Island.
Wow. So the dad was from New York? Did he live in New York?
My dad was born in New York. Okay. His mom and dad they all came in through Ellis Island.
Okay. Yeah. So I hope it wasn't my ancestors, the Moors, that got rid of your ancestors. You know, they were a bad bunch, those guys, you know, because when I did my ancestry, you know, very heavily Sicilian, a lot of North African.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the 1% of Nigerian blood I got was from my dad. So, you know, I hope we're good there. But, you know, we don't necessarily fit the bill.
Yeah.
You know, when people look at us, they don't think Babalawo per se.
For sure.
What's that been like? You know, not being, you know, aesthetically stereotypical of this position, you know, because we don't look like Orunmila, presumably.
Yeah, it definitely always leaves people kind of, when they find out that I'm white, it's always like, oh, he is?
Yeah.
And then they hear me Moyuba or speak or something, and it's like, he doesn't sound like he's white.
Word.
You know? So it definitely always takes people back for a second. But other than that, I've never really felt any difference from it. I'm just a guy, just like everybody's a guy, and we're just here.
Yeah, it's a conversational piece at best.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, at least, I mean, I've heard accounts of very famous Babalawos in Africa actually going through like moments of real enlightenment or eye-opening moments where some of their teachers were actually white Babalawos who actually were over there and had apprenticed and learned and functioned, and it was actually a little traumatic because they're like, oh my God, you know, especially with the occupations and things that have occurred, and then, you know, them speaking about the profound, you know, filial love that they built for these men who taught them regardless of skin tone. So, you know, as we come in now into this beyond modern age where, you know, these things are accessible to everybody, I think what's beautiful is that we are seeing the varied faces that Orunmila wanted.
Yeah.
As far as Babalawos, because when you look at Odus like 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗻𝗁, 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏, even though 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 to a certain degree, Orunmila initiated a different looking man from each of the 16 ancestral lands.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's nice now that there is more awareness and there are more brothers involved that look a little different. Even though we're not focused on that, but, you know, you always have to work with the impression of the client and the people that are coming in and help comfort them. I tell you, one thing that, you know, we get calls at the 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗏 all the time. Is he Cuban?
Yeah.
You know, it's yeah, amongst other things. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? So
it's strange the things that matter to some people.
Yeah, the poor things. I mean, you know, as I don't want to get too stereotypical, but, you know, there's certain things that people associate with certain ethnicities that, you know, I've met great professionals from every walk of life, and 𝗃𝗏 is really no different. And I make a point to mention it here between you and I is because we really have to overcome this predisposition towards, you know, our professionals have to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Because you could really be missing out on some great services because, you know, like, for example, the other day I saw, you know, a Japanese Babalawo on YouTube. Or I've seen
him. I know what you're talking
he's
about.
He's a beast. Or the drum players, or, you know, it's like, it's really the religion of man.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw one time, it was a piece of literature of Ifa, but it was written in Arabic.
Yeah. 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏 speaks of them getting initiated. 𝗵𝗷𝗸𝗏 as well. Orunmila exchanged a lot of philosophy with basically everybody, every prophet. He interacted with all of them, and he took the best from each, and he just brought it back through his travels. So, you know, that's definitely key as we're moving forward as a community. What are your goals now? I mean, how old are you in Ifa now?
3. I'm 3 now. I'll be 4 come June. And I'm 4 in Santo. I'll be 5 in April.
What are some of the things you're kind of looking at that either you're refining or you're trying to delve into even more?
Really, I'm just focused on my studies right now. I feel like I've got a pretty good idea of working the religion, performing ceremonies, things like that. I'm trying to dive deeper into signs and memorizing stories and that aspect of it. As far as goals, man, my real only goal is to make 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗏 happy.
Word.
Make him proud of his son, you know. That's really my only goal in life.
I always joke with my wife all the time. I said, do you think Orunmila knows who I am? You know, you get to heaven and you kind of like, hi. And he's like, who are you?
Yeah.
You know? But I think all of us have a special place within him. And I think it's like anything with children. Like, you know, the more you're around your parents, the more present you are to them and vice versa. And I think we are entering into a time where we do need professionals like yourself that take it seriously.
Yeah.
And understanding that Ifa is far beyond mythology and folklore. It is alive. And we're still so blessed to have it, you know. And the idea that, you know, people are willing to take it as a profession rather than a hobby is really comforting as well, because people want results.
Absolutely.
You know, and people, I say this time and time again, people will invest. but they just want to make sure they're getting the product they're paying for.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Absolutely.
you have a lot of tats.
I do.
They look good.
Thank you.
Would you like to share some of them with us and the symbolism behind it? I see the word Baba over there. I see.
Yeah. So that's my Santo name, Baba
Nice.
for me, and
Nice.
for
Got the dolphins on there. They could be doing better, but you know, we love them.
They could always be doing
love
better.
the fish. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah. This one was for a promise that I made to my guardian angel, to Obatala, and that was to represent that. Other than that, man, I got sleeves when I was like 16.
Oh man.
Yeah. At this point, they're kind of
thugged out, man. Looking good. Yeah. But what do they symbolize to you? What is the process of tattooing? Really, what is it? I mean, at 16, I don't know how profound we could have been with our thought process, but
I just thought they were cool at that age.
Yeah,
but
but
as cool, and we had a million ideas.
But as you've gotten older now, you know, what does the process represent to you?
As I've gotten older, to be honest, I really haven't gotten much more tattoos in older life. When I went through the Santo, my Ya recommended to me not to get more tattoos.
Okay.
So I've definitely treaded lightly with that, and if I wanted to get something, it was think about it for a very long time, make sure I want it, talk to Orunmila, make sure everything is good, and then at that point, move forward. But yeah, it's really been a long time since I've wanted to put something permanently on my body.
Wow.
For sure. Yeah.
And that's ironic, you being a son of Obatala. It's not taboo by any means. I mean, Orunmila in general, the tattoos are born in like 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 and a bunch of different signs, but, you know, to see a child of Obatala, you know, basically inked out, it really sets aside that stereotype. You know, Obatala wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
You know, he went through a lot of processes to go from Ayaguna to 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, you know. What's your Obatala path, by the way?
𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏.
Oh, very nice, very nice. The king that speaks. That's mine.
Oh, well. Yeah? Right on.
Yeah, the white and purple for sure. But it is nice to see real examples, you know, what people actually look like, and we don't all have to fit, you know, necessarily that space. Going back to the kids, you know, them being initiated is fabulous. But, you know, as far as I'm not recalling their ages all per se, but like, what are some of the routines? Like, how are you exposing them to the faith? Like, are you guys taking care of things together, or are they kind of just watching you function? Or
yeah, so we'll typically take care of they just have their warriors, but we'll typically take care of their warriors together. Usually on Mondays, but whatever day of the week that we can. We just try to get taken care of at least one day a week, and we'll tend to the warriors whatever they need. Getting them their things, candles, rum, whatever, and really just having them talk to them and try to build a relationship with them and know who they are and have that. I don't know how to say, like, I don't want them to feel awkward having a communication with God.
Yeah.
And to be able to pray and to be able to know that someone on the other side is listening, you know, and you're not alone. You're not here talking to a rock that's not anything, you know, like someone's listening to you right now and they're going to help you. Definitely. Yeah.
I think the scariest thing in the human experience is loneliness.
Absolutely.
Solitude, you know, just being by yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's completely against all that, you know, we biologically are composed of. So the idea that you can speak to something that's not going to speak back to you and still get a result is maybe the most comforting thing that, you know, anybody could think of. Maybe that's the whole reason the religion's around now, kind of thinking about it, because, you know, when you have nothing else or no one else, you have this cement head.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that's maybe why 𝘃𝗍𝗍 is the first guy, because he's kind of our first friend. He's, you know, you talk to him and all he does is listen.
Yep.
I think it's a really resonating message, because we as Babalawos, ideally we should be listening more than we're speaking.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
If we're consulting, I think, you know, coherently. Brother, what advice would you give to somebody who's pondering 𝗃𝗏 or interested in 𝗃𝗏 after all of your experiences and what you went through?
Faith. Have some faith. Take that step. Until you take that first step, nothing is going to manifest for you. Nothing is going to change. You know, you need to believe and have faith and take that step, and you're going to see how the entire world opens up for you.
Any closing thoughts for our community at large, you know, our Roots podcast? Any words you'd like to leave them with as a lasting message? It's pretty grandiose, right?
That is a big question. It's a big
besides faith, yeah.
As far as a closing statement, just means more. This faith needs more open-mindedness.
Yeah.
A lot of closed-mindedness around it. I feel people need to be a little more open to the spiritual aspect of things, not have things such on a pedestal and have it on such an unreachable distance from you, and to put it more at a ground level where we can actually relate and interact with these deities and have an actual relationship with them.
I think that's definitely resounding, because it's like we were talking about before we started recording, you know, sometimes between all the sacrifice and, you know, yelling and, you know, all the things that are going on, because, you know, an Ifa or an Orisha process is an organized circus, as I like to say. You know, you have to find those moments within it to kind of have that communion. So I think that's the real initiation. I think that's the real process. It's not an animal dying or a song being sung. It's the feeling.
Absolutely.
You know, that we share with them, and that energy that vibrates off of us.
That oneness. Absolutely.
Wow. My brother, I sincerely want to thank you for being on. And, you know, our closing words to you is thank you for being a professional, for being a son of Ifa, for being faithful to Ifa, for being a prime and proper example of what it is to be Babalawo as you continue in your journey, your study, your refinement and elevation. I think you're to be studied. I think you're to be analyzed. And I think a lot of people are going to gain a lot of benefit from watching this interaction or interacting with you directly. How can people contact you? IG?
Yeah, Instagram.
What's the IG name again?
Mike Hayes.
Yeah.
With Mike Hayes with 3 E's.
Yeah, for sure,
That's me, definitely. Add me, friend, message me, anything. I'm always here, doors open, anybody who needs help. Absolutely.
Thank you, Papo.
Oh, for sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's headphone time. We got some shout outs, so go ahead and throw those things on.
That's right. What a great show.
Phil.
Thank you, Mike. That was a great show, man.
Oh, thank you so
Fabulous.
much for having me.
Hope everybody watching got some enjoyment out of that.
Sure.
And if you did, just make sure you leave a comment if you haven't already, and to subscribe and hit that like button. But it's time to show some love to the people that show love to the channel.
Yeah.
If you're curious about that, just hit the little join button right under this video. We have 3 separate tiers of content just available for you guys. That could be extra shows, early releases, discounts on merch, you name it. So here we go. Let's go to super fans.
Yeah.
We got 𝗃𝗏𝗏.
Thank you.
We got I Am Justina.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
And we got Mama Magical.
Okay, yeah.
All right. And the VIPs.
Oh, yeah,
Let's
the
show some
VIPs.
love to Cookie Fury.
Thank you, Gogi.
Show some love to Sherry Cameron.
Cherry.
And Amanda Justine.
We appreciate you, Amanda, and we appreciate all of our members. If you know somebody that can gain some value from the channel or the membership program, please let them know about it. 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃andmore.com is up and running for everything from products to services. You can catch the podcast on all major platforms. From all of us, thank you. And until next time, see the light.